Welcome to everybody. Oh, and I don't even have a joke, Kim Chen. That's bad. Well, I don't do the jokes at these. They're too short. Sometimes we do the Corlea, we do a full hour, as I think you've been on as well,
Yes.
at the talk and taste. But these brown bag lunches are quick, so that people can munch on their lunch and learn something about the wines and meet
That's
people like
wonderful.
you. Yeah. So we'll give people another. We actually opened early today, which I think is a first. Those of you who've been on these before, we're usually a minute or two late. So we're pretty proud of ourselves, aren't we, Kim Chen? That's right. So, and we're getting to be old hat at this, and Corlea has been with us several times as well. So, and we've got David Markovich, our head of marketing, is with us today too. I see you, Paul Barnes. Hi, Paul. Good to see you again. I think the last time I saw you was at the head office in Montreal. So very good. And I'll chatter for another minute or two just to make sure everybody's on. And what we've always found, even when we're a small group like this, we record this and it goes up on YouTube, and we get hundreds of hits where people get to learn more about the wines that are in each offering and more about the winemakers and just these wonderful partnerships that we have with winemakers around the world, which really is the ethos of Opimian. If I repeat myself, forgive me, because it's very much it's important to me, and I think it's important to all the members each time we do this. So, all right. So, and there's another one to admit, Kim Chen, you're keeping an eye on that, so I won't have to worry about that. This is a brown bag lunch, as I said, so we'd like to go about 20 minutes, half an hour. If there's lots of engagement, lots of questions, we'll keep going. Corlea is in South Africa on what, 8 o'clock in the evening, you said, Corlea? Is that right?
It is 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock.
Yes. So it's
Yes.
dark. And do you mind my sharing the information about the electricity that you shared with me?
Yeah, sure, no
Okay.
problem.
Yeah. So they actually have revolving blackouts to save power. And so Corlea was kind enough to go to her home where they have solar panels so that she has electricity to join us. If she was at the office right now, we wouldn't be seeing her. So we really appreciate that. Thank you very much. And so we're talking about Cellar 301, which just opened this week, and we're talking mainly today, Corlea, about the wonderful feature wine on page 2 and 3 that we've selected specifically to celebrate our 50th anniversary this year. So why don't we just get started, and you can talk about if everybody can see that, if they have me on the screen, this 2-page spread, and let's talk about that, Corlea.
Oh, it's not going to work. There we go. But the name of this wine is Erfenis. And I know it's difficult and it doesn't sound like anything I could imagine that but in Afrikaans, which is, in the Western Cape, one of the many languages that we have here in South Africa, and the language that I speak, or which I grew up with speaking, and the Bosman family and the Apollos family grew up with, Erfenis is a word which closely translates to 2 English words, which is heritage, and I'm going to forget the other one, but it's actually, it's the only...
Legacy.
And legacy, that's it. So in Afrikaans, our word actually has 2 meanings, whereas in English, when we translate it, we actually need to use the 2 English words. So, and the wonderful thing is that it speaks to, the future, but it also speaks to the past. And it speaks to the fact that obviously as vine growers and as a winery and winemakers, we've been given a beautiful gift by our forefathers. The fact that the family has been there for 8 generations, that the Apollos family has been there for 5 generations. So a gift from the forefathers in terms of what they had grown for us as a business, but then also this legacy, the fact and the feeling that in some way, whilst we're busy working, it's not working, it's actually leaving something for generations to come. So for this wine, and I said to Kim Chen, it's actually our pinnacle wine. It's a wine that tells the Bosman story so beautifully of heritage and the fact that we do come with a wonderful history, but also the fact that we're actively working towards a sustainable and even a regenerative agricultural future And we feel that that's so important. So that's the name. What's in a name? That's in the name, Michael.
And it's an appropriate name. I mean, I think that that's so important when you're choosing a name like this. And you have been making this wine for years, but you don't make it every year, correct?
No, I think when you're talking about a wine which is supposed to be the pinnacle of your production, you're working with nature. And I think this is the one thing that sets wine apart so beautifully from many other beverages, is the fact that it's all about place. It's all about, the environment and the climate and so many factors year on year. And then sometimes when you're talking about a blend and how things work together, we're wanting these three components to have such a synergy that they're even better than the components. And some years, even with the best efforts in mind, it doesn't come together. And it's our prerogative to just make sure that when we do release this wine, that it's just the very best, and that we're really proud to put it forward. And it's a wine that we always see as a gift, or it's a wine that you want to, I always see it as gift. It's something that you want to give someone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also a wine which you enjoy with a special occasion because of all of the intent that went with it. So no, not in every vintage.
No, and this is, I believe, the 2018 is the one that we're presenting to the membership this year. And
Yes.
and so, do you want to talk a little bit about the winemaking there, that when it would have gone into tank and into bottle?
Yes. So if you think about this concept of heritage, and then also maybe what we leave for the future, it's important to know that Wellington in South Africa is a small town. And just to note that in 2018, the Opimium team came to visit us in South Africa, and you were able to see, our vineyards and our cellar. So you would have seen a lot of this, but our little village is some 70 kilometers from Cape Town. So we were able to show the team on specific places on our farm. When you stand on little hilltops, you can see Table Mountain, which is quite iconic, a site for Cape Town and South Africa. So there's this proximity to the ocean and just this beautiful landscape. But Wellington in the olden days, but like hundreds of years ago, was the last frontier for people to move or to go into Africa. So you could imagine people having wagons. Our little town was actually called the Valley of the Wagon Makers, because people would mend their wagons just before they went into Africa. And in that time, leading on to the very early times of settlement in South Africa, things like Chenin Blanc and Cinsault were really important. So there's the first tie, Cinsault, in terms of a heritage planting for Wellington and for the Bosman family. The next point comes to Petrus Bosman, who's our MD and 8th generation. His grandfather always spoke about making wines in the cellar in the 1950s. And in that time, Cabernet Sauvignon was a modern day grape for South Africa. Could you imagine? It feels like it's such a long time ago, but it also feels like it's so recent. If you think that the 50s was when Cabernet actually only settled in South Africa. So he knew, his grandfather, Petrus's grandfather, Petrus Senior, knew that if he planted Cabernet and he used Cabernet in small volumes in his Cinsault, he could elevate the price of his vintage, he could add value. So that was the next thing. It's almost like the past and then a little bit of moving into the future. But then the future is actually where Petrus Bosman in 2003, as a young, a young student, just finishing his studies in finance and following the dream of his grandfather in wine, was confronted with the fact that Wellington is a warm place. So if you come and visit, we have generous sunshine, but I think it's the most beautiful thing because you can taste this generosity in our wine. But sunshine means that you need to be thinking about what you'll be planting for the future. And people were telling him about places like Sicily, where a grape varietal like Nero d'Avola is so just this preeminent grape varietal. They're pinnacle grape. And it is that because it is drought resilient and it loves sunshine. And we were thinking, but why wouldn't we plant something like that in Wellington? So then all of these things come together, and we're talking about the fact that Cinsault is the heritage, and that's one of the bases for this blend. Cabernet, because we knew that Petrus's grandfather believed that it really did well in our environment and it added value. But then also in terms of thinking about climate chaos in the future, what would the South African landscape look like? And introducing a grape varietal like Nero d'Avola. And it's the only planting of its kind in South Africa. And it definitely stands proud in this blend. So three-way blend, telling a little bit of the history and the future, I think, for Bosman.
No, that's marvelous. And I was actually on that trip when we came. So I've been to the site, and I can still remember being out in the field with, and you as a company are big grafters, aren't you? And you do grafting for the entire industry. And we
Yes.
got to see a demonstration of the grafting that was quite a remarkable thing to see. It was so neat. And I think heritage and legacy, it permeates everything to do with Bosman, doesn't it? I mean, just with the things that you're doing for the country and for the people. And what I found so incredible is that you've got your family working there too, but I felt as though all of your employees were family too, that you treated them all like family. It was a remarkable thing to see and to experience. It was wonderful. And so, do you want to do a little bit on the tasting notes of the now how Erfenis? Did I say that right?
Yes.
Yeah, not bad.
Well, I think in terms of tasting notes, you obviously have such an immense team tasting the wines. And then every time I look at these beautiful, the book that you print, I'm still waiting for my copy because I think it's going to go onto my coffee table. But I look at those notes and I just think how amazing they are. And I always think that tasting notes, which originates in the area where these wines are going to be enjoyed, are the most important. So what I can give you is the South African context of, the things that I enjoy about it. So the Cinsault brings the most beautiful silky tannin, and we almost see it as the Pinot Noir of a warm climate because it is lighter. It has this beautiful, almost like a cherry rim and clarity to it. So it brings beautiful red fruit, and there's a word, it's an English word, just to remind you that English isn't my first language. It's like life, I think. It's this lightness that it brings to the blend. Cabernet is this core of beautiful darker fruit. And what I always enjoy about it is how it fills the mid palate when you taste it. So it gives the sustenance and the body of the wine. And then the Nero d'Avola, I think, just brings a beautiful spicy note to it. If you think about Sicily, I don't know if you know the dish called caponata. If you're a vegetarian, it's just the most amazing thing because it has aubergine and it has all of these beautiful vegetables, but it comes with this spiciness. And I always almost feel the spiciness from Nero d'Avola. It also comes with a much more inky impact into the wine. So 3 very different components. I think the fact that we do have such a beautiful maturation period, you could imagine that we're releasing this into your selection as a 2018 release. The amount of time that we've now had in barrel, French oak barrels, and now also in bottle means that these 3 components get the opportunity to blend and just to become this beautiful complementary wine, which I just think is so it's so apt for the time in which you'll also receive it on your side of the world. I don't know if that gives you enough information, but
I think that's brilliant. Yeah, and I'm a huge proponent of blends in that you do get so much nuance from each of the components, and you've described that beautifully about why you put those components into the wine. And Louise Wilson, one of our MWs, she did the writing on this particular page and says that this is drinkable 2023 to 2033. So it's got some cellaring potential as well, obviously. And that's, I enjoy that about Opimian, where we get to order a case of it and we can try it in subsequent years. And I make notes so that I can see the progression of it as it goes through. So, and this is one of those wines that's going to be fun to do that with. And I'll definitely be keeping one of them right through to 2033 and beyond. I like older wines too, as long as they're well stored, right? They can do very well.
Michael, can I
Yeah.
tell you where this wine started?
Please.
How this wine started?
Yes.
So I'm going to be honest, I've been working for the Bosman family for the last 17 years. So maybe just if we go back to how the Bosman family, I mean, the history of the family is immense. But their vine history has always been the base of the wine connection. And then we have a 270-year-old cellar, and this is where Michael came to visit us, in that cellar. But that cellar was closed in the 50s, and that's why when you come to South Africa, it almost seems like a living museum, a wine museum, because from the 50s there was no modernization, and that part of the cellar is now where we keep these barrels for maturation. So it's a beautiful, almost an emotive place. It's if you go there, you go back into history. And onto that, in 2007, the family built a beautiful modern facility, which is wonderfully workable. If you could think that we're basically an all-woman team in terms of making the wines. But and that gap was because in the 50s, there was this renaissance in the wine industry in South Africa. Winemakers were traveling, they were going abroad. Some of them were even studying in Germany, and they came back knowing that they needed to invest into cold fermentation. But that would mean that all of the cellars would look very different to what they were looking like in the 50s. And it was also this pinnacle moment in which the vine industry and the nursery really came to become a force. So the family decided to close the cellar in 1952, focused on the nursery, actually became the nursery in the Southern Hemisphere, which supplies a third of all vines into industry. If you could imagine, more than 15 million vines a year produced. So an immense part of what we do. But then in 2007, opening the cellar again. And that's when I joined the Bosman family as the winemaker. It's a long story, but in 2010, I had twins, a little boy and a girl, and Petrus Bosman, our MD, and his wife Carla. Carla's on the front page with me. If you look at that catalogue, so they had their firstborn Bosman son in the same year. And I think, when you have children, there's this very, very special moment where you really think about what's been and what's in the past and what you've been given, and then also the future of what you want to give this child or children going forward. And if you're a writer, you write. If you're a poet, you write a poem, or if you're an artist, you do art. But for us, it was what would a wine look like if we wanted to make a time capsule for the future. So I think, in thinking about this wine, it's absolutely that. It's a capsule of people who were very emotional in 2010, about the fact that there was new life and new possibilities, and wanting to think about what a wine would look like that we would like to, have for future generations.
So I dare say you too are an artist. That not just a winemaker, but I always find that wine is art, isn't it? I mean, you're expressing yourself in that certain way and putting that how you feel.
I'm going to be honest in that, yes, I think in wine we're interpreters of what we're given in terms of a vintage, and the biggest artists, and you wouldn't believe it, are the viticulturists. They have shorts and they have boots and they're in the sunshine all of the time. But I mean, in terms of what they're able to get out of nature and what nature gives them every year is actually the artistic part, I would believe.
No, that's a wonderful story. Thank you. So please, anybody have any questions, please type them into the chat. And I think that you've done such a great job of describing this wine, and you've certainly convinced me to buy a case. And I'm really enjoying these feature wines from the front pages as well. And then why don't we go a little bit, like I was saying to you earlier, I've got the Adama Red in my glass, and Kim Chen has the is it the Merlot, or do you?
Yes.
So yes, okay. So the Merlot of the Generation 8. But I'm on page 9 with the Adama red and white, and the Adama, we had that case, that mixed case, was that last year or the year before, And there was a very special reason for that with what that Odama program is doing. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, sure. I think the context of our business is really, I would say, groundbreaking in that in 2008, our business was part of the biggest land reform transaction in the South African wine industry. So what this means is that in that transaction, 26% of our whole business, plant, production, soil, land, was transferred to eligible colleagues and workers on our farm. So it meant that for the very first time, we're now talking about a multiple ownership model where people who work for this company is absolutely fully invested in it. For somebody like myself, I mean, we can say that I'm a winemaker. On the other hand, I'm also a manager. For anybody who knows what it's like to manage people, it makes a very big difference if the people who you're working with are also owners, and that they know that the stronger our unit, the more we work together, the more there is to share, and the more the effect is in our community. So I think even just for somebody who has been working for the company for such a long time, it's been wonderfully such an exhilarating thing to work with people who are really happy to be where they are. So if you're working with people who are happy to be there, it just makes such a big difference. The other thing is that, so if we think about that Adama wine, so we've been talking about the Bosman family, but the Adama family is actually that wine specifically named after Adam Apollos, and his nickname was Adama. And there are so many Adam Apollos on our farm that you usually have Adam Apollos, but when he works with water or irrigation, he's Adam Irrigation. So many Adams on the farm, and people who are so proud of that heritage. So a long time before 1994, when South Africa, came from the very darks and the mists of apartheid, this family already had very strong bonds with a family who had been working for them for 5 generations. And they knew that instead of looking for external, inroads into this company to grow it further, that they wanted to work with the people who have been working with them forever. And this is a relationship that's grown over time. The other thing is that obviously through the sales of our wines, because we've organized ourselves to be fair trade accredited, we also get the opportunity to ring-fence income from the sales of our wines into community projects. So if you come to visit, you'll be able to go and see a beautiful pre-primary school. All of the
been there. It was wonderful. Yes. They sang to us.
They sang.
Yes.
Then also all of the transport. You could imagine that for people who live in rural communities, being able to be transported and to go to places absolutely broadens your life and your experiences. We have the most amazing opportunities for children. Could you imagine? I'm a mother of a child now who's also just finished school. If you think about getting children into a tertiary education and getting them on the road to adulthood, it's really difficult if you're in a rural environment. You need computers, you need a cell phone, you need to have an email address to do applications, all of these things. And we have teams of people who support these young people with all of these tools to, and there's the electricity going onto
on or off
electricity. So that's the switch from solar power to
the grid
utilities.
again, right? Yes, right.
We're on the grid. But the long and the short is that the business has absolutely become a hub for our community. We have more than 500 permanent workers. The difference is that these workers actually live on our farms, which means that we have a community of more than 1,200 people of all ages, you could imagine, which is part of our story.
Mm-hmm. That's just wonderful. And when we come back to this, we talked a little bit about this. We talked about blends already, and this one has no fewer than 6 different grapes in it, and again, each for its own purpose, and then comes up with this beautiful medley of wine that I so enjoy. And then let's talk a little bit about the generation. 8 wines, they're on page 10 and 11, and such a great value. And we price froze them this year. Thank you for doing that. I know your cost of production of every single aspect has gone up, hasn't it?
Oh my goodness, hasn't this year been crazy? I mean, we're all under the impression of geopolitical pressures and what that means. I just got an email this morning that our screw caps will be going up with 17% from January 1st. But all in all, I think the long and the short about this range specifically is that it has this approachability and drinkability. I mean, those wines are the ones that I have in my fridge and in my wine selection, so that when somebody pops over for a drink after work or for pizzas or just some really good conversations, that's the wine that you need to have very close by. And they also tell beautiful stories about our environment. As we said before, Wellington is sunshine, so these wines are really generous, but they have a beautiful drinkability, which I really hope that your members will enjoy when they do pick them up.
And there's always member favorites, like the number of cases that we get orders for each year. It really has become one of the leaders in this particular offering each year. So we thank you for that. If anybody has any questions, please put them in, because we'll let Corlea get back to her family and her home. And looking forward to getting to South Africa again. I don't know when that'll be. Actually, you know, one of our members, I met him at an event yesterday, a non-opinion event, and he said he and his wife were headed to South Africa on December 31st. So I said to make sure that he reach out to me and see if we can hook him up. He's going to Cape Town, and so you're very close to that. So that would be great.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, no, very
I
good.
think this is the one thing about South Africa, I think, which is amazing. This year, for the very first time, been able to travel again. And even although traveling broadens one's perspective and is so important, and it's one of the things that I love most about my work, coming home, I think Michael will be able to join me in saying that the friendliness and the generosity of our country is
second to
quite
none.
special. Yes, quite special. So,
No,
and I think this is what the wine industry is also over the years been able to almost relay in wine, you know, a friendliness and a generosity. And I really hope that when you do find these wines and you do pick them up, that you'll be able to taste and enjoy those, and that in some way they will urge you to come and visit our shores and to enjoy them here where they were made.
Absolutely. So, well, thank you for joining us for lunch. I used to bring my lunch to these, but I found that eating my lunch and trying to enjoy a conversation were difficult. So I will go and have, but cheers, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. Corlea, thank you so much. We will.
Such a pleasure. I'm
see
going to
you
go
again.
upstairs and I'm going to have barbecue. My family is upstairs doing a barbecue. So just so that you know, this is what we do in summertime. So if you could imagine just how, you know, we are on the different side of the world, still a little bit of warmth here with us. Yeah.
I have freezing rain here, so it's just as a comparison. Cheers, everybody. Have a great day. Thank you very much for joining us. Good to see you, Corlea.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim Chen. Bye-bye.